Welcome to another episode of the Limitless Life Podcast. I am your host, Kyle Smith. And if you have not done so, hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another podcast. And if you love this podcast and want some more tips and tricks on how to improve yourself, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. There are tons of instructional videos there. You can find the links below. And today, my guest is the one and only Jesse Neufeld. Jesse, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me, buddy.
Fantastic, my man. So you have instead of people telling or you telling people about you, I'll tell people about you first, and then you can tell people about you.
It sounds
Cool?
good.
Sick. So I don't know how I found you on Instagram, but I recognize that you were in a crazy accident, and definitely going to talk about that. You're in a crazy accident, and you were in the bed. You look mangled. And now it looks like the only condition you're suffering from is scoliosis. How does that happen?
That's hilarious. Um, how does that happen? Well, yeah, so like you said, you saw the documentary. It's basically telling the story of how the gym saved my life. It's kind of a cliche story in my mind because there's so many people that have that type of story. But whatever, can't be enough of those stories out there, in my opinion. Hopefully, it inspires other people to want to use the gym or any other. I think there's other ways you can do it too. It's just the gym is what I stumbled across, and it happened to work hand in hand. So I went there specifically to vent anger. Um,
Nice.
yeah, because I went through something super traumatic. I had lost my fiance when I was 21 years old, and I was the only one who survived. And the guy who did all of this, he was drunk. He was driving drunk. And it was just one of those completely avoidable things. And it fueled my anger even more, knowing that at the end of the day, it was a choice that a guy made that did this. And it made me super angry. And it made me like, I was scared of myself at one point, like the things I thought about if this guy was still alive, what I would do to him for vengeance,
So then
like to,
for context as well, talk, let's hear about what happened in the accident.
yeah, okay. So I was driving back to my hometown. I was with my fiance. She was in the passenger seat. We just barely left the one city that we were leaving to start heading to the other one, got on the highway, and we get to a bend in the road. And this driver who was going about 160 kilometers an hour came into my lane, causing a head on collision. Um, where I got the 160 kilometers an hour from is the police report, kind of based on skid marks and all of that stuff. They kind of found roughly in that number. And then also the truck driver who was on the road that night, who ended up being my witness. Um, he ended up telling me that this guy was flying past him when he passed him just minutes before this accident. So, and I say accident, but again, accidents are preventable, right? It's more of an incident, I guess.
Mm.
But anyway, so that's what happened. Head-on collision. I was going probably, who knows, between 100 and 120 is usually what I travel on the highway. So that whole collision was almost a 300 kilometer an hour crash to a dead stop. And yeah, the dash had cut my my fiance at the time in half at the torso, left me with a mangled femur that broke outside of my leg. The restraint from the seatbelt ended up blowing up my intestines, and my truck blew up and was on fire, and I was unconscious in my vehicle. So I was left in there burning. And then my witness who approached the truck, he went to my passenger side of my vehicle first, tried to get a response from my fiance, got nothing. And then he's just in a state of shock. So he overlooked my side while looking at the other three people involved. The driver of the vehicle, he was laying face down on the pavement. He wasn't wearing a seatbelt, so he flew through his windshield. Got no response from him, obviously. And then he had a buddy of his who was also in the vehicle, in his vehicle, and he was ragdolled in the back seat of their car. So my witness totally went right past the one guy who was actually still alive, which was me.
Jeez.
And I was left in there unconscious. And anyway, he calls 911. And as he's waiting, a few other bystanders start collecting. And I came to a little bit of a consciousness and I had no idea where I was. I was totally messed up. I would imagine I smashed my brain off of that airbag so hard.
Yeah, I know. Shit.
um, yeah, so I was in and out of consciousness many times trying to figure out where I was, what was happening. Anyway, I did feel warm. That's all I knew, even though I was on fire. I just felt like I was warm. I did not notice my fiance beside me. Thank God. That would only mentally mess me up worse than I already was after all of this. Um, very grateful for that. But anyway, I just instinctively was like, I'm warm. I got to get out of here. Opened up my door and I hopped out on my one good leg and I black out. But this is where one of the bystanders turned around and she saw me hop on one good leg across the highway to the ditch and I rolled myself out. And everybody there was like, what the hell? Because this guy, my witness, told all the bystanders nobody made it, right? So they're all like, there's a zombie coming
That's
out of this
crazy.
truck right now, you know, and everybody was just in a state of shock. And anyway, there was a Stars helicopter. Shout out to them. They're in Edmonton there. And they were the ones who came and picked me up. And I had, yeah, 10% chance of making it to the U of A hospital. And somehow I did. And then, yeah, that was the beginning of the story anyway.
That is so savage. I really wanted to get contacts, even though like that's crazy. It's a crazy experience, and I really wanted to chat with you because that's nuts. I cannot even count on my one hand the amount of people that have gone through something like so like not visceral, but so like crazy. And the thing that I find that's really interesting that really drew me towards your content is that was your experience. So that was your baseline, right? And you mentioned gratitude within even that type of chaos.
Yeah.
You have a significant like what it says in the background of the video there. It says victim to victor, which is what the podcast that you want to have.
Yeah.
And I recognize that a lot of people would have the woe is me part. And we were chatting pre-show about the kind of that little phase of yourself. So how I'm just gonna ask like an overlapping question because there's
Sure.
like a bajillion things that I really want to like ask you. But um one thing that you were talking about was the anger, the anger before. So
Right.
do you still live with that anger after so long? Is there any components of forgiveness? If there is a forgiveness, how would someone get there? Even if you're, yeah, I'm just curious about that.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot to touch on just that topic alone, honestly. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm going to try and remember all the things I want to touch on this, but the anger, so yes, I was able to eventually extinguish the anger through the modality that I chose, which was essentially bodybuilding is what I was doing. Bodybuilding and powerlifting were my two biggest things that helped me sort all of this anger out and work all this anger out. And I actually remember it. I'll never forget it because I lived with this anger for 5.5. It was about 5.5 years. Just super angry person. I never took that anger out on anybody. I just became very reclusive, and I'm already naturally an introverted person anyway. So yeah, I just would listen to a ton of heavy metal and go to metal shows and lift heavy weight. Like that was my thing, and I did that religiously. I was in mosh pits all the time. Anything to try and channel. I was trying to find healthy ways to channel it so that I didn't project it onto other people. I remember already being so self-conscious with how depressed I was, feeling like I was that burden. I didn't want that to come across in any other way, including the anger, being a negative impact on other people in my life. So, yeah, about 5.5 years, I was leaving the gym after a solid workout, and I was driving home, and I don't know what it was that day. I don't know why it was that amount of time, but and this was consistent training for 5.5 years, like maybe missing, 2 or 3 days in like a year, basically. I would go like almost every day. I still don't even know how I didn't overtrain and burn myself out, um, but anyway, I'm driving home, and it felt like the weight of the world just fell off my shoulders one day. I don't know what happened. And what's interesting is that in that exact time frame is also the first time that I found gratitude since what happened to me happened. Um, that's it. We'll save that for another topic here. We'll stay on anger though. I I was super depressed. I was leaning heavily on substances, starting to fall into a bad path of substance use to try and mask and escape the depression and the heavy grieving I was going through. But in between that, I would have these raging bouts of anger throughout the day as well. And when I found the gym, it was when I was having one of those bouts of anger. And it was one of the, yeah, again, grateful. One of the best things that could have happened. I don't know what it caused it. I don't know what I believe in divine things happening, or, a divine being having control over our lives. I don't know. It is interesting, some of the coincidences that happen in life, though. It makes you question. Um, but like, how did I end up at that gym that day when I wanted to go and get more pills? Why did that happen when I was depressed, but then it flipped to anger, and then the anger led me to want to do something more proactive, I guess you could say, in wanting to get ahead of my anger. Um, so anyway, when I learned that I could use the anger in a productive way at the gym, I then was learning how to flip my sadness into anger so I could go use it productively. So if I was feeling down and out that day, I would start thinking about that guy who did this to me. Flip it to anger, because there's nothing productive sitting in this hole of wanting to just want to use pills and everything. So what I would do is I would just think about this guy, instantly get angry, start listening to some heavy metal, drive to the gym, exhaust it all out, and then it would just cleanse me. Like I used to call the gym like my sanctuary all the time. And
So we definitely know how you got to the point of scoliosis.
so
Yeah.
to answer the very first question, yeah, that is essentially what happened. And bodybuilding it wasn't my goal at the time at all. It was literally just lift as heavy as I can, as long as I can, to exhaust that anger. But a byproduct of lifting was starting to grow. And I came out of that hospital 125 pounds. So I put on my initial weight, which wasn't much in the first place. I've always been a super small guy. My natural weight when I was 20 was 140 pounds. So to get from 125 to 140, but still that amount that I put on in muscle in that short amount of time was like, whoa, like this has a whole nother side effect that I'm appreciating about it, right? And especially because um I dealt with heavy, heavy insecurity. When you're permanently disfigured, it's it's tough. Like it really messes with your head because you're like, there's nothing I can do to change this. Like I can't put on makeup. I can't, you think of all the things. I lived in a hoodie like all the time to keep myself as covered as possible. I refused to go to public places. I didn't go swimming for years. Even if I went to a beach or whatever, I'd keep a t-shirt on. I just didn't ever want to be seen. Um, but anyway, one before I go on a tangent again
Yeah.
somewhere else, one last thing about the anger thing. I was seeing a psychologist at the time, and he, did a check-in. How you doing? I was like, oh, same old. Um, and then I told him about my anger, and he's like, oh, the anger is not a good thing, And he's like, that's basically that's a byproduct of depression. And I'm like, I was like, well, let me tell you what I've been doing. And then I explained it to him how I'd flip states, use it in a productive manner, which at the end of the day, I'd at least go home feeling somewhat better than I was at the beginning of the day. And he actually was like, he paused. He's like, in all my years of practice, I've never had somebody convince me that anger could be a good thing. And you just did. And I laughed. I was like, that's funny. I was like, because I have this love-hate relationship with this emotion because I never used to be an angry person. And I don't like being an angry person. I don't want to be an angry person. But right now it's helping me navigate this. It became a strategy of mine to get through this, So
I think the thing that's kind of cool. Have you watched like Avatar, The Last Airbender?
yes. Yeah.
Pretty much. I think of like in my mind, I think of like a flood of emotions. I think of a tidal wave, right? And those feelings are going to come. And I think a lot of people try to push it
Yeah.
and force it to stop or force it down. And I in my angriest times, similar thing, like the gym is just a fantastic outlet. And that's where you're water bending those feelings and emotions into a direction that is
Right.
useful, that is constructive rather than destructive. So I think the thing that's really awesome about my takeaway from your story is so far is that you have this, you're experiencing a feeling that everyone experiences, but you're using it for constructive purposes rather than destructive purposes. And that is based off an intentional decision. Like you
Yeah.
don't want to be the person that would lash out. You just put it into a direction and that would serve you. And I think that is such an amazing way of using such a powerful feeling,
Yeah.
right? It's so powerful. And that's why a lot of people also, I think there's a solid chunk of people that just enjoy being angry because it feels good to be angry because you're dialed in. It's just people are using it more so for destruction rather than construction.
That's right. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's craziness, man. I got a pretty neat question that I was pondering earlier today. So, okay, we're gonna go. Do you have like a pre or post, like a pre-crash, post-crash? Can I refer to it like that?
Yeah, sure. You can refer to it as
Okay.
that.
So, was there a difference? Obviously, but like from like a generalized kind of perspective, um, was there a big difference in like your thoughts on was there a big difference in your mentality towards life before compared to after, and what were the differences? Like at your most level-headed kind of baseline, what were the differences in pre and post crash?
Mm. Yeah, so I've thought a lot about this. A lot of personal development, a lot of things to navigate ever since, and just for those of, listening in or whatever, and don't really know all the background or have time to watch my 15-minute documentary. This was, 15 years ago when this all happened. So this wasn't anything that happened recently. And I was just telling you before we started the podcast that, it took me almost 10 years to really get over everything that I went through. And I've done a lot of psychoanalyzing. How, why did it take that long? Was there ways that could have shortened that? So anyway, to kind of bring that back into this question, I've always wondered, like, so I took on, we'll start with this being the most prominent thing. I heavily took on a victim mentality. I I was young. Facebook was relatively new, and I was watching everybody. This was before, like, we all know now, everybody's posting their highlight reels and everything, right? But before, we didn't really piece that together. At the beginning, everybody's like, wow, everyone's just living amazing lives, and especially when you're young, you want to flaunt, you want to show what you're doing. And so I'm sitting alone in my basement post accident, wondering, like, why the hell am I going through what I'm going through? Like, this, in so much psychological pain and physical pain. And I'm watching my friends, partying and traveling and new relationships and buying new trucks and whatever, right? Like, um, and I just lost my new vehicle and I had no way to get a new one back. So I'm just comparing myself like crazy on top of what I'm already going through. And it only fueled this victim mentality, because I'm now believing like I'm the only one going through something like this, you know? And but I've thought about this heavily, like, was it just that led me to that victim mentality? Well, the thing is like, and I love my parents to death. So I hate to call them out, and I hate to point out any flaws that they did, but there's no doubt that there was an upbringing that also naturally made me more that type of mentality before the accident. I very much had the narrative around my childhood was, don't get your hopes on, or expect the worst, basically. Nobody's intentions are good. Like, these are like the type of things that kind of I was influenced by. So I think I already naturally was more inclined to almost take on that woe is me victim type mentality, just because of the narrative of the environment that I lived in growing up. And again, like, it wasn't the worst. Like, I had a pretty good upbringing. I don't want to make it sound like I was in like some, like, or my parents are shitty people. They're definitely not. Um, thank God for my parents. I mean, they were there for me post accident and everything. Who knows how much worse it could have been if they weren't there for me. But anyway, just to give some context into the answer of this question, because I have given it a lot of thought. And definitely that was part of it. But if I were to say what probably had more pull than anything, was definitely the comparison to social media. And I think because of that, I've also had this love-hate relationship with social media ever since. I've really struggled with social media, because my first interaction with it was actually a detrimental thing for me psychologically. um I've kind of come to more of a balanced perspective with social media now. But anyway, heavy victim mentality is what I took on going after. And I wouldn't say it was near as heavy before. I definitely would be like, oh, of course, or just my luck, you know what I mean, kind of thing. But I like took that on tenfold post accident. It was, nobody's going through this. I'm alone in this. Everybody's got it way better than me. Yeah. Anyway, I don't really know too much more to elaborate on that.
It's all good. What pulled you out of it? Was it a decision? Was it something that inspired you? Because now it's kind of interesting, because you had the previous kind of baseline. You set up, you already had this foundation of the woes me. And then it was created tenfold. So now it was like woes me Super Saiyan 4.
Yeah.
And then, despite all of those, you're out of that woes me. You're literally victim to victor.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how?
Okay. So, first thing, patience and time. Everybody says it, right? But I was very impatient with myself. I think a lot of people are. We beat ourselves up a lot, especially like I'm a very self-critical person, so that never helps when you're just constantly analyzing yourself, noticing you are an angry person, you are a burden to other people because of who you are. Um, but I just I reached a point and it took about 8 years. So you want to talk about time. We all go through stuff and we're like, man, like I hate where I'm at. I hate the state I'm in. I need to change it. And that's why most people do go to substances because they want to change it instantly. They don't want to wait the time. They don't want to accept that it's going to take time. Um, but it took 8 years, 8 years of like just incrementally starting to get better and thinking different. Maybe this is a good time to actually bring up that moment of gratitude. Actually, 5.5 years after, um, I had just bought a dog. I was super lonely for a long time. I was pretty undateable after everything I went through. I was not an awesome person. Not somebody you really want to spend a whole lot of time with, and super insecure. So obviously, women don't want insecure dudes. So confidence thing was lacking. Um, but yeah, so I got a dog because it was just years of being really lonely, a lot of loneliness, and got this dog and super high energy American bulldog, and needed a lot of running. So after work every day we'd go play fetch. And like, to be honest, I think everybody who's like trying to work on themselves or interested in personal development, I think almost everybody now knows because of the internet and social media, like gratitude, 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 right? Like everyone preaches it. But before all of that, before that was all over the internet, you had therapy, you had therapists that would teach you some of this stuff. However, mine didn't tell me anything about that stuff for some reason. I had to discover this on my own. So it was just like a really profound moment for me. I basically was playing fetch with my dog. She was just super stoked to be playing fetch. And there was a pond nearby the park, and she went dove in it. And she was just like, the amount of freedom. It's like, I've been cooped up in the house for 8 hours. I'm like, now I'm free. And she was just so amped. And it was a nice sunny day. And for whatever reason, I just had a moment of gratitude. It just came over me. I was just like, look at this dog. Like, this dog is loving life, just being in this park and diving in this pond. It's so simple. I was like, it just made me think, man, it's a really nice day today. I'm so grateful it's a nice day today. Like, and that helped huge. That was kind of the beginning of getting out of that victim mentality, was gratitude, learn, like actually experiencing it thoroughly. Because another thing too is a lot of people can say, oh, you just got to be grateful more, or you got to journal and write down the things you're grateful for, right? Well, things I tell people, like, when you're practicing gratitude, you want to live it. You want to actually experience it. Don't just, I'm grateful for my warm shower. It's like, no, think about the time when all you had was cold water. Like, think about that before so maybe that's something you're grateful for, but think about the time when you actually didn't have it. Or maybe you've actually always had it. Maybe you don't even know, but try and imagine what it would be like to not have that. Or if somebody else told you what it was like. You talk to people from other countries who don't have so many of the privileges we have. It's like, remember what that guy said, and really live it if you're going to truly experience gratitude. Because I don't think in that moment, 5.5 years later, if somebody just said, oh, dude, you just got to say thanks for things more, it's like, I'd be like, whatever, dude. I'm depressed. I'm angry. Like, that's going to go in one ear and out the other. I had to feel it. I had to experience it for it to actually have the profound effect it had on me going forward. So that's what happened. 5.5 years after. Back to the 8 years later, a lot of incremental things happened after that. A lot of practice of gratitude helped me a lot start to pull out of it. Um, but then I was like, I still am all over the place. I'm still not mentally stable. You know, there's things that trigger me. Um, and I decided to take 3 months unemployed and go back to my home province that I grew up in, where all my family, my extended family are. And I made an intentional effort to get on top of myself. I was like, okay. And this is kind of where the personal development journey started. You know, it was 2015, and I'm like, I'm so tired of the old me, and I know I'm better, but I still have so far to go. So I just intentionally I separated myself from distractions. I learned so the loneliness was a fear. Like I hated being alone, and I wanted to learn to be okay with being alone. That was one of my intentions. Um, and then I talked to my doctor. I said, hey, um, I don't want to demonize prescription medication with what I'm about to say here, but throughout everything I went through, they were trying to push prescription medication on me the whole time. Um, Understandably so. I mean, I literally was walking around telling people like I want to end my life. So it's like, well, we don't want that, and like that's a scary place. And you know, I've been on the other side of that now, where I've had close people in my life saying things like that, and you're like, oh man, like what can I do now to make sure nothing happens, right? So I totally understand wanting to use that. However, I did not want to use the prescription medication. There's just a lot of side effects to it that I just was not interested in possibly experiencing. And I also didn't like the idea of creating a dependency on it. I wanted to find something that was, because they weren't talking in a way like, hey, no, this is a tool to get you to a place where you no longer are dependent. It was just, we need you on pills, you know? And I was like, so that was, I immediately withdrew from that idea. I was like, no, thanks. I'll figure this out on my own. And even though you could say, well, how could you be against pills, but yet you were leaning on prescription medications and alcohol and stuff like that? It's like totally fair. Like it seems hypocritical for sure, but neither or is good. It's just I didn't want to go that route. So I have a really good doctor, thankfully. It took me forever to find him, but I finally found one, and I was able to be super open with him. He got to understand who I am. He knows I don't like having dependencies. He's known my previous struggles with other substances, and he just said to me, he's like, Jesse, you seem like an intelligent enough guy. Just learn about your condition. Start by learning about your condition. Because I actually was trying to get like a good therapist from him. I'm like, can you please, like, I'm having no luck with therapists. My association to them has always been negative. I feel like I'm getting nothing. A lot of them had literally said, I'm learning more from you. And I'm like, come on, man. Like I'm paying you like almost 200 an hour, and you're telling me that you're here learning. Like I'm here to try and figure out some stuff. So anyway, I just didn't have a good association with therapy at the beginning. And I went to him to be like, hey, is there somebody else? And he actually recommended, one of the best things he could have done was to say what he said. He said, go get books, go online, learn about it, learn about what it is that you're going through. He's like, and then figure out ways that you can navigate it further. And I was like, I respect that, you know?
I
And
got I
so
gotta say, like, I don't even believe that it's like a doctor telling like it sounds
I
like a
know.
buddy at the bar that's telling you this. But
Seriously.
it's so
Yeah.
crazy. But it's something I also want to touch on as well is like with prescription drugs, there's a buddy of mine who says it really well. He went through he had a huge bout of depression. He was on the meds, And then he was saying that his doctor said something where it was, because you were mentioning the dependency as well. And it was that prescription drugs are a cast to help you learn how to handle what's going on. And
Right.
then just like a cast, it's removed over time.
Right.
And I thought that was a really good analogy because I was like, okay, because I think that I had the idea before as well, because before that kind of way of looking at it and that thought process was introduced, there was more people depending on it than not. And I'm similar, like I had a dependent, more so of a dependency on things previously where that were not serving me by any means. And having a dependency on anything outside of the self is risky business.
Yeah. 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 And I totally recognize that, and same thing, even with me wanting to lean on alcohol or prescription pain pills, to numb sadness or whatever. Um, I just knew like this isn't the way, like this is totally taking things out of my control. Which is also, to bring back the gym or whatever. That's what the gym ended up doing, right? It's ended up creating something in my control. Like my self-esteem now actually can be fueled at some point in my control by changing my appearance physically, also just feeling strong. Like I felt so weak mentally, but if I was strong physically, it ends up going hand in hand. You start feeling strong mentally, So yeah.
I think it's definitely like I think it's the mind to the body and the body to the mind. It is not this or that. It is
Right.
one, it's a collaborative unit that works
Totally.
together in order to make us our spontaneous creatures that came from nothingness. We're the remnants of we're a spontaneous compilation of the remnants of a dying star.
Oh, there's a quote.
All right. I stole it from a physicist.
Nice.
It was really cool. But man. Okay, got a question for you.
Okay.
Um when yeah, with a huge pause as well. But when you're thinking of what's your outlook of life, I guess the accent, I think, it's kind of interesting because I had a question, but now I'm actually thinking about it more, and I don't think it's much of a question, but it's kind of interesting because, like, I think the way that my brain works is I look at someone's before and after when they choose to do something different. And it's
Right.
kind of neat because I referred to it pre-cat crash and post-crash, but it actually, the real event happened later. And I think that that's kind of neat. I think um, taking that accountability and that self-awareness and being like, let's go guns a-blazing, just like be with the self is very important, man. So yeah, I guess I just wanted to touch on that one. I didn't really have a question. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. I mean, I was going
Cool.
to say we can keep going with this anyway, just to
Yeah.
elaborate a little bit further on,
Mm-hmm.
after my doctor's recommendation. I just intentionally, so I would just go to a restaurant by myself, start learning to be good by yourself. Before I used to always do that. Like if I had to do that, I'm like, oh, I'm such a loner, like that's all I would think about. But now that I was intentionally like, no, we're there to actually make something of this, to make this a better association. Then I could go there and actually be like, okay, still not my ideal. I wish I had friends, but or a date, but you know what? That's fine. I'm here to figure out how to be good by myself. Um, because that was one of the things that what I went through taught me that I needed to learn the most was there's going to be times in life where all you got is yourself, like, and if you don't find a way to be able to be there for yourself, like in the future when other things happen, you're going to be hooped again. You're going to be scrambling and reaching, grasping for anything again, to try and get through it. So I was like, that's one thing. If I could figure out how to be okay by myself, then so that's what I did. I spent a lot of time by myself. I brought my jet ski with me, so I'd just go jet skiing by myself. I had a motorcycle, still have the motorcycle today. Um, and I just rode by myself. I didn't go find riding partners or anything like that. And again, it's kind of, I still ride my motorcycle for that reason. It's just like to enjoy my own company and to just enjoy something I like by myself. I know some people like they always need to be doing something with someone, and they never ride their motorcycle because they can't line up schedules with other people to ride with. I'm like, I'm good just to ride by myself, because that was part of my whole thing was being good on my own and enjoying things on my own.
Why do you think people struggle with uh, being by themselves?
Oh, I think most people will tell you they're afraid of their thoughts. It's really what it is. When you're by yourself, you have more time to think. You're not as distracted, and people are afraid of their thoughts, and because they don't know how to manage them, they haven't figured out that thing yet of how to manage those thoughts or how to even let some of those thoughts just go. Like a lot of those thoughts don't need to be hung on to. So, I mean, that's kind of the practice of meditation, right? Um, but yeah, so I think that's pretty much it. Is they just haven't found the tools yet to be okay on their own, so that when those thoughts come, everybody's going to have them. Those thoughts are going to come in, but you got to find those tools to be okay to face those thoughts. Face yourself. So I think that's the biggest thing. They're just not prepared, and there is a level of preparation I think that's needed in order to try and go into the world by yourself and be confident by yourself and okay by yourself. um however it's determined is best for you to prepare for that. So
What are some tools that you are you still currently using tools, or do you like kind of frameworks, or how is it that you kind of how is it that you go about that?
yeah, well, so I ended up spending a lot of time with understanding my patterns, right?
Mm.
It was like, okay, so I know this, I know that. And so then what I would do is I would just keep trying things. So this is one thing I advise so many people. And I know when you're depressed, the last thing you're thinking is I want to put effort into anything. So when I give this advice to anybody who's, particularly going through depression, they're just like, oh, okay, yeah, for sure. But I can't even get out of bed, which I totally respect and I understand. But if there's ever a day where you're like, it's not as bad, it's not as heavy, and you actually could get yourself out of bed and could go and do something, um, take action on something, because you never know what the thing is that's going to actually end up sparking the next thing for you. Like for me, it was anger that brought me to the gym. Little did I know that anger bringing me to the gym was actually going to also be a tool of getting me out of depression. Because what happened was I'd come out of the gym and I lifted a little bit more than I lifted last time. That boost my confidence. That boost it made me feel like I'm more capable of things. So now I'd leave the gym and on the drive home, the endorphins, everything going. I'm like, what else am I capable of? You know? So with myself, I just started recognizing a bunch of patterns, things that brought me here, things that brought me to a better place. So now today, with all of that awareness, I now can actually think about the things that I've used in the past. And sometimes it doesn't even work the same way it worked the last time, right? Like, so for instance, we were just talking about the season and seasonal affective, yeah, like the weather plays on my mood a lot in the winter, and it's sometimes I do have some low weeks, and I know I got to get through it. It's just temporary, but it's like, man, I am in a rut. I was like, but I got to interrupt this. So go cold plunge in the lake. Go tanning. Like I don't see sun. I work in an office, and then I live here in BC, and in the winter it's cloudy like 90% of the time. So I never see sun. So um I try not to spend a whole lot of time in like fake tanning beds. I don't want to look like a fake and baker, but and also probably not the healthiest to do in large doses. But either way, I knew that in the past it lifted my spirit a little bit. It made me feel, even though it was artificial, it gave me a little bit of a boost. So the beginning of this winter, I started going into something and I'm like, already, I was like, nope, we're not giving this longer than a day. Like, I got to interrupt this. I got to make sure I go to the gym. Another thing too is increasing cardio. Cardio helped with my mental health a lot too. So I was like, you know what? You've been slacking on cardio. Start doing more cardio for the brain, right? And probably could use it physically anyway. So do that. Do the cold plunge. Go tanning, and then sure enough, like it made me pull out of that a lot easier. So if you don't have the tools, keep trying until you find the tools that work for you. Like that's all I can ever recommend. And I know, like I said, it's hard to just say that to someone who's going through it because their motivation's already low. But if you ever catch that one off day where it's like, or maybe the anger overrides your depression that day and you can use it productively, go do something active, go for a run or something. Um, that maybe you learn that day, oh man, me getting out of the house and going for that run interrupted it the way I needed it to. It changed my state. I'm in control of this, and you build that confidence the more you keep trialing things. So, yeah, I don't know if I can really just give you specific tools because I think it's individual. I think everybody's going to find their thing, but you'll never find it if you don't ever take the step to find them. If you don't do one or two things, make a goal, maybe even one or two things a month, if that's all you can pull off.
Absolutely. I think the big lesson that really stuck out to me when you're saying it was the part where it's to continue trying things until you find the thing. It's
Yeah.
not try the thing that everyone's saying, and then
Right.
if that doesn't work, then just give up. It's like
Right.
no one ever has their first relationship and then I don't know very many people that their first relationship worked out for a long duration of time, but they have their first relationship and they break up, and it's not like they're not going to date ever again. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I think people I think like the persistence to keep trying things, even if it's little by little, it's inevitable to find something that works if the persistence to keep trying things is there. Something will change it in some way, shape, and or form that you may not even expect. And it might come out of nowhere, or it might be found in a place that you may not have known, like depression to anger, anger to gym. And but you but still trying and trying and trying. And I think that the beautiful thing that we have as humans is the ability to choose, and that choice to try can obviously yield. If something has a 1% chance of succeeding, it should be tested out,
Yeah.
because if we know for certain that what we're doing now is not working, then a 1% chance of something succeeding is a really good reason to try it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
Go
totally.
crazy.
Yeah, and like I totally sympathize. Like I've even, in all of these realizations that I've already shared, like I still have my days of self-doubt. You know what I mean? Like I still try something and then it fails and then like I said, I'm a self-critical person. So then I'm just like, "Oh man, it didn't work," and then I want to go back to that old headspace of, oh, I knew it wouldn't, kind of thing, and negative thinking. But yeah, like all you can do is just keep trying again. That's it's the only advice I ever have to give to somebody. Like even when I coach people, it's like people think that the coaching or the therapy is going to give them the instant miracle of changing this thing for me today. It's the thing is a lot of it is it's just templates. It's like, here's a thing, I got a thing here, but we need to fill in your individual things in the template that's going to work for you. I can't tell you what worked for me is exactly what's going to work for you. That's unrealistic. You're a whole different person. You had a whole different upbringing. So we need to see what works for you, what motivates you. What are your patterns? Your patterns probably aren't the same as my patterns. So, but the only way you find what fits in that template is by trying things. Think of what might work, try it. And
Yeah.
then If it got you that 1% closer, cool. Well, let's keep that going and see if we can bring that up. If we plateau at some point, then we'll rearrange something, right? So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
What's your this is going to be a deep one. Yeah, for sure. So, what's your outlook on death?
Mm, well, yeah,
It's
that's
a heavier question, but I think it could be there's been a solid chunk of like seasons in your life. And I think you could have an interesting take on it.
yeah, no, 100%. Did not think this was going to be a question, but if it only makes sense, this would be a question.
Yeah.
The death thing is an interesting one. We can go really deep into this. We could try and keep it surface level. It's just there's so many branches to this question. I guess first and foremost, I am not afraid to die as of today, and there's many reasons for that. Um, but I would actually say the biggest reason for that is that I'm so content with where I am today. So it's like I know there's always more to be done. I know there's more that always could be done, but I'm very happy and I'm very proud. I never used to be able to ever say I was proud of myself for the longest time because I always, like I said, self-criticism. I just always say there's more you could do. You could always be better. Um, and then I compare myself to other people who's had it worse. So then I'm just like,
You
hard
feel
to be
bad
like,
for feeling bad?
yeah, almost. And so anyway, but I'm at a place now where I'm proud and I've accomplished quite a bit of what I never thought I would have ever been able to accomplish. So I'm not afraid of death because I'm super grateful that I've even made it here. And then now here's the thing though about the death question. This is where we can kind of go deep. So I told you I grew up in a in a religious household, right?
Mhm.
So I had a different level of fear of death um, instilled in me because it was the whole heaven and hell thing, right? Like if you're not, flawless human being, like you're going to hell. Um, and that put a lot of fear into me as a kid. That put a lot of fear, and I've looked a lot into this, and this is a really common thing with people who grew up in religious households. Trying to get rid of that fear of death, that you're going to eternally be in torture if you navigate the wrong path, So, um, I've so I the thing is, like when you're, I don't want to use the word indoctrinate, but it's hard not to when, like you're a sponge when you're a kid, So and your parents are your God when you're younger, they're the all knowing, they're the highest power, So you take everything they say like as, the Bible. It's like, this is the truth, So when you're a sponge and you're absorbing that, I think it's almost, I don't know. I don't know how much work it would take to try and reverse that after like, being being indoctrinated into that. I'm still trying to figure all that out, but that's where I'm going with this is I guess I still have a small fear of where I go after this life. So and it's all stems from that. But at the same time, I if I could just fully remove that, there would be zero fear at all. It's not the death itself. It's just I got this weird thing about afterlife because of how I was raised. So
Oh, yeah, that's fair.
yeah.
That's pretty funny. I think honestly, I think it's really, really interesting. I think it definitely is very common for folks that were like really indoctrinated to have that fear afterwards. And it's so interesting because I think that we have the opportunity to be able to like kind of create our own kind of idea of what could happen. And I think what not knowing what happens is what provides us the opportunity to create what
Mm,
happens for us in order, this is for a tactical reason, in order to be content in the present
Right.
And then when we get to the point where we end up going to hell, then we just deal it with it when we get there.
Yeah. 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 Fair enough. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
I love that word. I love that word create, you know, like,
Dude,
um,
I think that definitely inspired by Rick Rubin. Like his audiobook is awesome. The book's awesome too. I haven't looked through it like as much, but Andrew Huberman had it like a whole bunch. But he really talks about creativity. And I think something that's really cool is that we're going into a time where creative people are just becoming more prominent. And I don't mean like ill-intentioned creators. I mean like creators or people that have like they want to express who they are in this present time in order to impact or invoke emotion in others.
right.
Whether like, and I think like what we're doing is in a creative outlet, like coaching people. There's a creativity component to it, and even us having a conversation right now, there's a creativity to the words that we say, to the ways that we want to express things. And it's us expressing a form of creativity in this present moment as the people we are now. And
Right.
then the thing that I think is really cool about video podcast and stuff is like when we're in our 80s and 90s, we can watch this and
Yeah.
then we can think about, whoa, that's kind of crazy. But I think like life is, and I made a tweet about this, but life is each day we wake up and there's a canvas, and that is the day, and we paint how we want that day to turn out. It is our piece of art. Our choices and behaviors are a reflection of the art piece, which is us.
Yeah.
And I think being able to look at, or for me at least, when I adopted a perception of I am the creator, I am the artist of my life, I'm the artist of the things that are going on around me. I I was able to kind of I was able to find a balance between the logic side and the creative side because I was able to find the overlap. And then when I found that overlap, I became less resistant to the things I didn't want to do to get to where I wanted to go.
Hmm. That
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
I think creativity is beautiful. Like
Yeah. Well, like I, one of my biggest realizations was, you know, again, like we'll have to go into like more of the faith stuff here
go for it.
soon, but right now, like I just wanted to say, like a lot of people, you know, obviously after what I went through, a lot of those people believed, you know, like this is all happening for a reason. There's a divine entity that had this. It's like that is the last thing you want to hear when you're going through what I went through. You know, it's like I just lost my best friend. Don't worry, this is all for a reason. You know, to get out of here. Like how am I supposed to accept that? You know, like unless I really did have such a strong faith in something that is pulling the strings of my entire existence. Um, but I wrestled with that so much because at the same time, I was like, I want there to be a reason eventually. For a while, I didn't care. I was like, I'm just a victim. I'm just another statistic of a drunk driving incident. You know, who cares? Whatever. There's a million of those stories out there. I did believe that for quite a long time until I did start sharing my story with some people, and they were just like, you know, deer in headlights and changed even their perspective on life, you know, and kind of changed. I was like, oh, well, I was like, and I would always tell my story like it's whatever. I was a drunk driving victim, you know what I
It's
mean? I'm
something you
another.
experienced.
Yeah, I mean there's a million of these stories out there. There's nothing that significant about mine, right? But one thing I learned is that we all as individuals have a purpose. Because because even though you and I, you know, I can tell already we share a lot of common interests, even if we regurgitated the same things, the same topics and everything, some people are going to resonate with a guy in your hat and a beard, and some people are going to resonate with me wearing a black ball cap. You know what I mean? Or like we were saying, personalities. your personality I jive with more than Kyle's. So I'm going to listen to that, even though it's like everyone keeps saying the same thing. And so many things I've thought I've come up with organically. And then like a week later, you see it online, somebody's already said it or done it. Right. So it's almost impossible to be completely original, even in thought anymore. Um, but that's okay because like I said, I was like, well, whatever. I'm another person. There's a million of these stories on the internet. I even doubted doing my documentary, to be honest with you. Like, I was like, yeah, who cares? There's a million of these stories out there, you know? And I'll quick side note, I did also have a little bit of fear of judgment that I was using it for attention.
Mm.
Um, I know that a lot of people use victim status for attention these days, so I didn't want to ever come across like, you know, this is the only thing that's so unique about me is my story, so all I'm going to do is keep putting it out there and regurgitating it, you know, or put it out in another forum, because I've put it out there a few different ways. I've wrote about things I've gone through and things I've learned, um and now I did it in a short documentary of what I went through. But again, I was like, you know what? I want there to be a reason. I want there to be a reason. I reached a point because people still were like, yeah, even though you're like, you know, the millionth story of a drunk driving thing, I met you, I talked to you, and it was you and your story that impacted me. So that's where I was like, well, I was like, this is interesting because it all kind of hit me all at the same time because I also was at that point where I was like, I think I want to do something with it because one of the hardest things, and I think the reason why people really want to cling on to that belief that everything happens for a reason is that it justifies what you went through, you
Mm.
know?
Mm.
Um, you want to believe that there is a reason to your pain and your suffering and everything that you had to do to get through it. You
Because it
don't want
makes it
to,
easier to go with it.
yeah, yeah, and it helps you accept it better. You know,
Mhm.
it's like, oh, you know what? Well, I got to go through this because there's a reason to it, you know? So, whereas if you take like more of a nihilistic approach to it, you're just like, nothing, you know, nothing matters or nothing, you know, happens for a reason or whatever. Um,
I have a funny
it's
take for me. I have a funny take on nihilists, where it's like, because not nihilism is the philosophy that nothing matters because we're all going to die anyway. So why
right.
bother doing anything? Blah blah blah. I think you know how there's like different cliques and the cliques talk about each other. So in philosophy, there's nihilism. Then there's like there's different like Albert Camus has a philosophy, Carl Jung has a philosophy, Viktor Frankl has a philosophy. So you know when there's like chatter in between the subsections of a section.
Right.
So for my, if I were to be like, oh, nihilists, for me, I think, and it's not offensive by any means, but I think nihilists just spend, I'm not even sure if I'm saying it right, nihilists spend too much time thinking and not enough time doing, so they don't get to ever feel the
Mm,
benefits of productivity.
yeah.
So they
Yeah.
have no reason to do things, so then there's no purpose to life.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, no
Totally.
wonder you feel like you're gonna freaking nothing matters. You're not doing anything with the time you got.
Yeah.
Nihilists are just complainers with too much time on their hands.
It's I think that's the source of a lot of our problems today is too much
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you think about
Yeah.
it, you know, like we're not out there trying to survive on like the grand scale of life and death every day. You know what I mean? So it affords us this space, and sometimes this space actually can be detrimental, you know, like if you don't know how to use it properly.
I agree because we have to moderate our time. I think because like we do have a lot of time, and because so many things are done for us, we are given more time, so it becomes harder to kind of like work in the way that our bodies are meant to work. Like we're meant to work. We're not meant
Yeah.
to be comfy.
Right.
So it's like it's a dangerous place to be, man.
Well, and not only well, and work and purpose kind of go hand in hand a lot of times, right? Like that's a whole nother topic, but you know, that's honestly what's motivated me a lot to want to try and push past my comfort zones and put myself out there more publicly and, jump on podcasts or start my own is, um, there are so many people who live in that headspace these days. I've noticed, like, I got friends that are like, yeah, what's the point? What's the point of anything? And I'm like, man, that's defeating. Like, and I I was there. I was there as a depressed person. What's the point? I didn't want to be alive. I wanted to end my life several times. So I very much was in that headspace. But now I'm like, don't ever want to be there again. Right. So like anytime I see it, I'm like, no, 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 no. Like that's not the way, like I want to spark something in you that gets you amped on something, like and not be thinking that way.
Mhm.
But like you said, there's just so much now that's done for us that now our contribution is being reduced. And
Mhm.
therefore, if you don't have your contribution, you don't feel like you're serving your purpose. So,
Well
um,
said.
yeah.
That
And
was
that's,
a good one, dude. That was really good. Nice.
yeah, no, it's something I've thought heavily on, man. Like, purpose is a huge thing that human beings need. And I guess to tie that back into where we branched off of there, but like the creating a reason
Mm.
thing, that word create, I realized, you know, everybody kept saying too, like, that find your purpose, you'll find your purpose. It's like I learned like there was no purpose in anything I went through except for the purpose I created. You know what I mean? So that's where I was like, everybody kept saying you'll find it, but I never found it. I never found like maybe I was looking for something really big and profound, like you're gonna be a public speaker one day or something, and that's the purpose in all of it. And because that didn't happen, maybe the purpose was served. Maybe the one or two people I ran into at work while I was going through some surgeries and they found out about my story and face to face and changed their perspective. Who know? We don't know how much purpose we're actually, I believe in ripple effects huge.
Mm.
Like me meeting that one coworker, even though to me it seemed like nothing. I was in a shit mood and I just gave yeah, this is what I've gone through and I'm a victim and blah, blah, blah. But they're like inspired by my story and the fact that I'm still breathing and telling them this. And it changes their whole insight on life, their life. And now maybe it changes them as a person as a whole. Maybe something big really happened. You know nothing about it. And then who they became as a person, they actually ended up handing down onto not only their inner circle, their friends, their family, but maybe they had kids one day. And then who they were and my story, my one story I thought meant nothing. It was whatever, actually had a small piece to do with the upbringing of their kids. And I'm not trying to make it sound like, I I'm so special and
Awesome.
I'm trying to create.
Yeah.
Yeah, I try to be very careful in treading on that. I do my best. Like honestly, I know like a lot of people, it's just hard not to be judged these days. Obviously, you can't control people's perspective.
Mhm.
We've seen a lot of people out there trying to do things or be something, influencers or whatever, right? Um, but I'm just saying this as a realization I had, and I guess speaking to anyone who's listening to this who have wrestled with that, is feeling like nothing matters or whatever. That no, there is something that you offer. Again, there might be something that you might say. You might not think you're special. You might think that your story is no different than anybody else. You might think that what you have to offer isn't that unique from what anybody else can offer, but a lot of people need it from you. They don't care about Jesse, they don't care about Kyle. They need to hear it from you. They need to get it from you. They need to be served by you. And and if we're looking at fulfilling purpose, we have to look at the smaller possibilities that could be happening on a bigger scale that you're not even aware
Mm.
of, you know. And so that led to me wanting to make this documentary and really putting it on out to the public. I wanted to make it as vulnerable as possible. I wanted it to be exactly how it was. No shame. And then I wanted to become a coach. I was like, why would I not use what I've learned to help other people? Because at the end of the day, that is how I'm going to create my purpose. The way I'm going to make this a reason why it happened is my choice. Like you said, you have control of your choices. So I could just continue, working a normal job and stay hidden in a hoodie. And I'm more comfortable as an introvert and not putting myself out there, hiding away from social media or whatever. But at the same time, if I want a reason for all of what I went through, it's up to me to create it. And that's what I've been trying to do now for the last several years. And that's what I encourage so many people, like that waiting to find thing. We're in so much more control than we allow ourselves to believe. We think we're not in control of a lot of things, and that, life's just happening. The classic life isn't happening to you. It's happening for you. But yeah, so I just encourage everybody to really think about that. Think about you do have purpose, and you do have you can create a reason for whatever it is that you've had to go through yourself. You do want to justify it,
Mm-hmm.
you want to justify, you don't want to justify
Existence.
it. Yeah. Yeah. You don't want to justify it in the form of attention either. Like I said, there's a lot of people who try to get attention. I follow a few people who have been through some significant trauma on my Victim to Victor Instagram. And I am having a hard time deciphering how many of these people are actually trying to just encourage other people through what they've gone through versus just using it for attention. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's a tough line to toe. You don't want to use the things you've gone through or whatever for just pumping yourself up when you're trying to go through something mentally. Use that as a crutch or a band-aid. You know what I mean? A lot of people do that with victim status these days. I definitely don't encourage that. It leads to a dead end. It's no different than trying to mask it with alcohol or whatever else, so yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, man. I think that the power of choice is an underrated superpower that all humans are capable of. And there's obviously circumstances where choices are more difficult, but it's also still a choice to be like in those particular areas, unless like the situation could really be changed. But I find that people are so quick to just accept the circumstances without engaging in the curiosity of what could a better life look like.
Right.
Because it's really tough to look at the light side when you're just sinking into that sewer cycle where it's just over and over again. You just find yourself in the same like kind of miserable place. I found for myself, I find this is an interesting one. I actually find that it's one of two things that really impacts a person. I think it's the same, but there's it's discomfort or disruption or difficulty by choice or by chance.
Right.
I truly believe that within the duration of time that a human being is alive, that they have the opportunity of choosing difficult, which is much more manageable because you're prepared for it.
Yeah.
But oftentimes people wait for the chance, and yours was a chance. I'm grateful because mine was like a choice for when I really understand, like, this is the moment where I really had a shift. And that was by choice. So I'm very grateful that I got one by choice rather than by chance. But I think like it's like that. It's like the saying of iron sharpens iron. Even though it's talking about hanging around other people, like-minded people to become better at whatever it is that you're doing. I think when there is difficulty, when there is some sort of painful experience, there's the possibility of sharpening that, using that experience to sharpen the body, to the mind, to forge it into a weapon, because a really strong sword is built through pressure, heat, and cooling and being beaten up.
Totally.
And the more that we experience the discomfort or the pain, I find that pain is the producer of prosperous living. I just came up with that, but that's kind of fun. Pain is, I forgot what I said there, but basically pain, yeah, pain produces a prosperous living or a prosperous life. And I think it's interesting because it's kind of like, so there's the story of I might tangent it on this one, but there's a story of the bison and the cows, right? When there's rain, a rain cloud coming in, the cows will see that rain cloud coming in and they'll start running away from the cloud. So they keep on running and the cloud keeps on coming at them, and they just keep on going until they're tired. And then no matter what, the rain comes on them. And then I would imagine I would be a miserable cow if that was the case.
Yeah.
But the bison do something different. They see the storm coming in and they run towards the storm because they know that the quicker they get through it, the sunnier it's going to be. But
Yeah.
it's really easy to prolong putting off the pain because it's so interesting, because it's like really fucking hard at first. But once you kind of get into a groove where it's just like, I think it's like things just start firing. It's like, oh, I get it. Oh, it's like,
Yeah.
to me, it in my brain, our brains can't really feel anything. But what I am my imaginary, what my ghost feeling in my brain would be, is that it feels like there is a click, like there is a switch.
Right.
And I'll be walking and I'll be thinking and I'll be like, oh, blah, 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 blah. That's my thinking, obviously. And then suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, I just destroyed 10 years of bullshit I was putting myself through in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's just a click and it's like, it's done. And I think it's interesting because when we experience that, when we have that big painful experience, either by choice or chance, that gives us an opportunity to build things up to a new baseline and then a beyond.
Right.
And then from that baseline and beyond, then we build up the momentum like a snowball. And then it goes from click, then it's click, then it's like click, 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 click. And then we actually come up with realizations faster. And I find that like what you said before, how you are experiencing you're the most content with your life now. And that's why there's not a concern for death. And I find that I am very much similar. I am very content and very present. And I think it's because we're not being fearful of a future anticipation, and we're not bringing it into to the present to choose to allow it to make us miserable. We're
Right.
just acknowledging it that it's there, but we're not allowing it to have power over what we do right now. And I think that that's where I think that contentness is another variable or another component of like presence.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually have a future social media post on this topic. Um,
Nice.
but yeah, no, I've been that word contentment's been one that I've been stuck on for a long time before I found it. I didn't even really know what it meant. I just knew I would distract myself for temporary fleeting emotion like happiness. Happiness is a temporary emotion. So then I was like, well, no, I want something longer lasting. Well, what am I really looking for then? And then that word contentment came into my brain, and but I never really knew what that definition, I guess, for me meant. Like there's the literal definition of it, but um for me, when it came to what am I actually trying to uh, what am I trying to obtain, and that at the end of the day, it was peace of mind. That's what I wanted. I just wanted peace of mind, and to me, that's what contentment meant. So therefore, I am striving for peace of mind, and that gave me the baseline of trying to get there, and and there's a lot of components to it. I think it's one of those things that I think everybody's gonna kind of come up with their own thing of what contentment means to them, what peace of mind means to them. But I think that word presence that you said is definitely a big part of it. You obviously are not going to find peace of mind if you're too stressed out on things in the past or the future. So definitely, definitely got to be present. Um, but yeah, anyway, there was something else I was gonna backtrack on, and now I forget what it was. But anyway,
Oh, good. It'll come back around. Not a big deal. Uh, what Actually, I'll give you my like little my little thoughts on death as well. Because I think it's funny. I think it's the second time I've probably said this on the podcast. It's kind of funny. I found that I'm like, oh, I definitely know my repeat go-tos. So cool. But so for myself, I actually flirted with death myself. I was also in an accident, and I mentioned that one before, and it was forward, whipped around into a ditch, barbed wire fence, 2.5 in between two poles, and came out of the car, and I was fine. Like
wow.
I'm not even. I'm like, it was just, we were upside down. There's shards of glass everywhere. We were on our way to a music festival. We had to wait until the next day. There was three of us, and all of us survived. It was
Wow.
craziness. So there's that. That was the closest to being dead that I ever experienced. Like that was like reflecting on it now. I think about it more now than I have ever before, where I was like, wow, that was a really close call. And then around me as well, I've just experienced like a variety of deaths. There's a couple deaths that I know that I won't experience. Like I don't have a sister, so I'm not going to experience that. Um, yeah, there's like a couple other ones, but like a twin brother, I'm not going to experience that one because I don't have a twin brother that I know of. But had a solid chunk of experiences, and what I've actually found, because I used to be very, very scared of death. Like I was actually just scared. I was scared to go to sleep because I was like, I didn't want. I was scared I wouldn't wake up. But I was like
Right.
a young kid. I was around like 7 or 8 when I remember like saying that to my mom, and then it was a solid chunk into my 20s as well. And now my perception of it is that I've flirted with death, and I've seen death come along so often that I actually look at death as just an old friend. And every once in a while, death will come around and be like, it's not your time, but it's, just, I'm here. I'm here. And those are the people that we lose over time. But it's just a nice reminder as well. But I find that by the end of my life, when the time does come where the flirting's done and death comes along and puts the hand on the shoulder and says, it's time to go to a bar for a drink,
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I'm the one sitting at the bar with the cool stories, not sitting at the bar
Mm,
complaining and bitching about my life.
right. That's
So
good.
so that was my reframe. That was my perception shift when it came to death, from fearing it to acknowledging it and accepting it as an old friend. It's a friend that, you don't want to visit very often. But that one was very, because I used to drag like that fear just into the present. And it did not allow me to feel that contentness that you were talking about. It was
Right.
just always there. And not like a crazy, crazy way, but it was just something that was always bugging me. But when I had that perception, I felt like that, like what you were talking about for gratitude, I felt like that, like I was able to breathe. And it felt like it felt like a different breath. Like a breath of gratitude is just, you feel it in your whole body, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny. Gratitude. Like anyone who's gotten to know me, whether it's through my social media or personally or whatever, um, I'll say often, gratitude all the time, right? And I wasn't always that way. Obviously, I had no appreciation for life. I wanted to die with everybody else. There's nothing I was grateful for. I just again I was a victim. Nothing was going for me. Worlds against me. Why me? All this stuff. But yeah, it wasn't until I did experience that feeling, that one day, oh, the sun is actually out and I'm noticing it, and there's no reason for me not to be in a good mood right now in this moment. And then I actually interrupted my depression for 3 solid months. I never carried on with that, but um, I practiced gratitude in the form of prayer, even though I didn't even know who I was praying to anymore. Because again, we'll get into this faith thing, but I had lost my faith. So I didn't know who I was really praying to, but whoever I was talking to, I was just saying thank you. I was just saying thank you for this, thank you for that, thank you for this before I went to bed every night. And it helped me fall asleep better. And then I'd wake up the next morning and I'd feel so much better. And and but I really needed to feel that, because like I said, I don't think you can just tell somebody like, you just got to be grateful, like you just got to think of things you're grateful for, and your whole mentality will change. You gotta feel it. Yeah, you gotta really like think about those things you're grateful for, so that you can bring that emotion onto yourself of like really feeling grateful. Because from that point on, I've been able to find gratitude for life, and I still do today. I didn't think I'd ever reach a point where I'd ever say I'm grateful I survived. I lived for years where I wished I didn't, so.
Something that's kind of crazy to kind of add on to that. I was coaching someone earlier today, and I'll have him on the podcast too. He's a pretty interesting character. And he asked me the question of, and it had to do with marketing. And he's like, if if people marketed health like to the way like true health, not like quick fixes, not booty blasters, like following the laws of physics and thermodynamics, following like just the what our body needs in order to function, rather than taking things out or fear mongering, oh, do this because there's this specific little part that says it's going to be horrible for you, so you better not do it. Just like the stuff that's going to work, like moderation and just thinking about our food stuff. But he asked me a question. He's like, do you think if like health, like maintainable health was promoted, people would stick to it? And I was like, yes, I absolutely think that because if it was marketed, like then more people would do it, because there would be a mob component to it, because we like to follow the mob. We're more likely to follow the
Yeah.
mob. And oh shoot, where was I going with that one? Oh, right. And so what I said to him was, but I think that people need to experience, even if it's for a fleeting moment, they need to experience what the other side of the coin is like. Because when we only understand one side, then so it's being not unhealthy, but like not in optimal shape to, let's say, hunt animals. Let's say that's a useful kind of baseline. I think people should be able to do that for survival. Zombie apocalypse happen. Okay, that's the context.
100%.
So maybe
Yeah.
not zombie apocalypse quite fitness level, and then zombie apocalypse fitness level. There's like the two. And I think if people just felt for a moment how good feeling good, like when you take care of your health, and that there's a moment where you just feel it and you're like, oh, because then we can make a data driven decision. It's like, oh, okay, so this is what the opposite feels like. Okay, do I want to go back to that? I think people should really try like one way, and then for like a solid 6 to 12 months kind of thing, and then
Yeah.
really think, you know what, if I want to go back to my old lifestyle, then I will, but at least I gave it a really good go.
100%. I mean, like I think most people who are any kind of fitness trainer, especially, like that's the goal. It's like, I
Mm-hmm.
just need to get you to experience this for even a few months. It's like, if I could get you to stay consistent with this, even for 6 weeks, you're going to notice a difference, like, but if you could do it for a year, like that's my baseline now. You know what I mean? Like, I've been training fairly consistently for 15 years, but you think I've been that consistent for 15 years? I've had
No.
half a year where I fell off. I was, I was in a good place. I got a settlement from everything I went through my lawyer and the insurance company, and I was living life, trying to make up for all the life I lost, and
Mm.
and training took a back seat. But then I start watching myself. I start getting a beer gut or whatever, and I'm eating like shit, and I'm feeling like shit. And then like 6 months goes by, and I'm like, okay, no. I was like, I know there's another side to this that's way better than this. Like, this is not going to be the new normal, So let's go back. And I know that I can go back there because I've shown myself I've gotten there before, So it's like, yeah, this beer gut isn't mine forever. It's
Yeah.
like I can get back to abs, like I've done it before, I'll do it again. And yeah, no, to show people that other side, that's the key for sure, to give them a taste of what it's like. The tough part with that is trying to do it as time efficiently as possible, because people will lose patience, right? It's very tough. They want to experience that ASAP, especially, well, this as a coach, right? It's like, I want results now. So trying to provide, that's our hardest job as coaches, is to try and show them the other side of it as fast as possible, and at least try and promote patience, because that a lot of it doesn't happen overnight. So
I
yeah.
always like to make sure that I like saying like we practice patience. Patience is a skill that we practice. It is
Yeah.
not something that we inherently have. It is something that we recognize as a skill, like playing a song or learning to play an instrument, learning how to read, learning how to write, learning how to eat, learning how to walk. It's a skill that people just implement on a regular basis. And it's really interesting because it's like I feel impatient, but I behave as a patient person.
Mm.
So it's interesting, like understanding like how we feel and what we do can be two different things.
But I think that just comes with self-awareness.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it goes like awareness, self-awareness, self-reflection, self-actualization.
Yeah.
If I
Yeah.
were to think of, because I think of the world as a video game, because gamification of things makes things a lot easier for me to be able to like stick to it and have fun.
Right.
So patience is just a skill tree point.
Yeah.
and so awareness is like one of those skill trees. So that's how I kind of think of it. It's like awareness that there's something going on, self-awareness that how the self contributes to everything around, self-reflection, how am I a part of the problem, and self-actualization is realizing how much impact we have on the world. And it's like I think it's the top of the Haslow hierarchy of needs. I think it's something like that. Something like that. Don't quote me.
Well, it makes sense to me either way. The order
Yeah.
still makes sense too. So
Sick.
but yeah, and like, and man, it's a beautiful place when you get to that self-actualization. Like, it's what inspired me to want to coach people. I want to see people experience what I experienced, to reach that point where you are content. It's like, you're content with who you are as a person. There's always going to be stuff you got to work on. Every phase of life changes you, every experience in life changes you. But if you can get to a baseline, a good hard baseline of who you are to be as a person, like, it's just going to help you out so much going forward through anything else that you go through. And I wished I had better resources myself, which is why I also wanted to be a coach. I'm like, I want to be that person that, I wished I had back when I was going through all my stuff. Maybe it would have shaved off, a few years off that decade it took me to, really put in the work. Um, but yeah, man. Anyway, I don't know if you want to, if you have another question, or if you want to, I can,
Let me see. Let me see actually.
I don't even know where we're at with time here. So
Oh, I think we're almost at the 2 hour mark. We're at least at an hour and a half. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. I haven't really been checking the time. It's been going pretty well. It's been going pretty well. Actually, it's something I'll ask because I think it's kind of like a cool thing to ask. What inspired Victim to Victor? Tell us about your podcast.
Yeah. Okay.
That way
So
it holds some social accountability for you to do it.
yeah, no doubt. Yeah, no, it's the hardest thing. Like, I mean, I've had this concept for longer than I want to admit, and I haven't even
2.5 years before I started this.
well, there you go. Yeah, I would say I'm pretty close to that. So yeah, I've wanted to, just as much as coaching, just look into as many ways I could possibly help. What's my contribution? What's my purpose? Create that, right? So I did it in a couple ways. I wanted to coach, but I was like, what else could I do? I was like, well, one thing I've always wanted to know is how much shorter could my suffering had been going through the trauma that I was in. How much of that did I create on my own? How much of that was in my control? How much might have been just circumstantial? And I basically want to talk to people who have been through all sorts of, I want to cover, I'm hoping to find some people that are at that self-actualized place. I want to talk to people that, have fully accepted what they've gone through, how they navigated it, embrace, the flaws in the way that they dealt it, but also proud of the ways they succeeded, because I want to understand what worked for them. I can tell you all day what worked for me, but what worked for me might not work for you. So, and also, I haven't been through every situation. I mean, I definitely had a combo with everything I went through, with the loss of someone I love, and then the physical insecurities and the mental health and all of that stuff. But I haven't been through everything. I don't know what it's like to lose a leg. I don't know what it's like. There's some people that also almost took their life over the loss of a girlfriend, you know what I mean? Like, and they managed to pull themselves out of that. Like, that's, some people are go through that. And I think it would be beneficial to know, how did people overcome something that just really destroyed them, and it doesn't even have to be the craziest thing. Like, it could, everybody has an upbringing as well. And some people have some crazy stories of how they overcame things. I got cousins who, they've been molested by pastors, you know what I mean? And like, there's a whole story there. And I don't know what that's like, thank God. Um, but maybe there's other people out there that are going through something like that. And everybody, I feel like, has something to share. Again, everybody has a purpose. And I also want to help, I guess, in creating that purpose for those people. Like I said, when you go through something really tough, you want to justify why you went through what you went through. So if you know that you ended up doing something that helped somebody else because of what you went through, it's going to help that person as well. So I'm hoping my podcast serves multiple purposes, both for the guest, but also for the listener. I hope the listener can hear and say, like, man, like, I'm going through something like this right now, and that guy just shared like a gold nugget for me, and I'm really going to use that today. And then also that person who is a guest just be like, man, I feel like this is going to actually help some people to know this, or whatever. Or maybe they get direct feedback, even better. Like, man, I heard your podcast, and like, holy, like, really shifted something for me. So that's my whole thing, is you are a victim of unfortunate circumstances at some point in life. I think we all are. But what's your story to get to be the victor over it, and it's funny, like, so I created this idea of victim to victor actually back in 2016.
Oh yeah.
and 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 it's funny because I was just like, how it started was I was using hashtags on my Instagram posts. This is the other thing too about me, being that victim mentality. I held a literal title of burn victim. You know what I mean? So I could easily embrace being a victim, because it's like, look, it's even in my new title. You know what I mean? I am a victim. Um, which did not.
I think it's kind of interesting. So this is kind of a cool observation that you held the title of burn victim, a title that others have created but have applied to you, and you're behaving in a manner opposite to the characteristics and traits that a burn victim would commonly have
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
practice. I think it's
Total.
cool.
Well, there was a real big realization there for me when I was like, I'm tired of being this character, this person who's woe is me all the time. And anyway, when I started to like really dig into my personal development phase, and get to a place where I was like really happy with myself and proud, and um I started sharing like a lot of stuff on social media. I only wanted to be on social media to promote, I guess, perspectives, like a positive perspective or something to think about, or just something positive. I didn't want to contribute to really entertainment or uh, just looking for attention or any other reason you may use it. I really just wanted to use it for that. But while I was doing that and making these posts, I'd use the hashtag burn victim in there. And I was already past this point of being a victim. So I was just like, I hate that title. Like, I don't want to refer to myself as a victim in any regard. And I get it. It's just a way to label, to describe a person, right? That looks a certain way. I get it. It's not, you don't have to take it that literal. But for me, I was taking it very literal because it was a thing I really battled with this being a victim thing. So I started like thinking, I was like, what's the opposite of victim? Right. So then I was just
Yeah.
like, and then, uh, and then I was like, well, I was like, victor. And then, so I was just like, so then I was like, victim, victor, victim, victim to victor. And then I was just like, victim to victor, V2V. And I was just like, huh. And I slept on that for a minute, and then I immediately was like, I need to start a brand.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
exactly.
but I kept using that hashtag burn victor
Mm.
instead of burn victim. And then eventually I sat down with pen and paper. I was like, what would a logo look like for Victor, for victim to Victor, and drew all sorts of ideas out. And now I have this crown behind me. It's actually got two V's in there and the Roman numeral 2. It just represents the words of it. But it's funny though. Again, it's one of those things that like then not even 2 years later, another guy I know who's missing 3 limbs, he writes a book called Victim to Victor.
Oh, yeah.
There's another podcast out there, Victim to Victor with so and so. You know what I mean? So it's just like it's like you thought you had something, but it's like everyone's now used it, but whatever. It's the point that matters. It's basically you were a victim of unfortunate circumstance. Tell me your story of how you became the victor over it, because there's something all of us could use. I'm doing it also selfishly for myself. Like I want to know if I lose a leg, I ride a motorcycle. It's not beyond me how dangerous that is. And it's like, God forbid, if something happened to me, I would love to know I had a conversation with Jake, who, lost a leg and told me how he navigated that whole thing before it happened to me. So I want to know like what worked for people in
Others,
all
yeah.
these different circumstances. How did they pull through their thing? So anyway, that's the whole thing. That's I wanted to kind of create a podcast, but I wanted to create a brand around it too. I wanted people to wear a crown where they remind themselves maybe they're not even there yet, but they're going to be. I'm not going to stay a victim. And wearing this crown, I just thought of multiple ways I can try and help people who's going through stuff, man. Because my empathy is through the roof, my sympathy is through the roof after everything I went through, especially when I didn't feel much empathy or sympathy. It just made me want to give it tenfold when I was finally able to. So
That's pretty sweet, man. I think that you're going to do some pretty cool stuff. I think it's going to go well. It's just learning. It's just like anything else. Like no matter what point we're at, we're going to be learning the skills to be able to be able to help people more. And I think it's going to be really cool when you get the people coming in to share their stories. And I think the thing that's going to be, or yeah, I think the thing that's going to be really cool is there's going to be at least kind of like what you're saying, how your story is different. It could be the exact same kind of experience, but when it's told from a different perspective, then it just clicks. And I think when
right.
you accumulate those guests that are going from victim to victor, then I think it's going to be eye-opening for people that don't believe that they can get out of there. Because there is, when you're in it, when you're in the sewer cycle, you don't feel like you can get out of it.
Yeah.
Until the thing is definitely put in there. But yeah, man, we're definitely like recording a solid length of time. So
I had a feeling.
I want to make sure that I get my questions in, my main questions, my final questions.
Sure.
So super, super simple. First one, you're on your deathbed again. once again, because you're already
Right.
basically there. Uh, you have your loved ones around, no content of yours exists, your podcast doesn't exist anymore. This conversation is not, it only exists within our hearts and minds, but with everyone else, it's going to go away. What is a piece of advice that you want to pass on to other people?
Oh, there's so many. I think a huge one for me is don't take things personally. Don't take things super personally. Um, but on top of that, like we've already touched on this, so I guess this is just regurgitating it, but um, like just keep proving yourself capable by finding new things to keep trying and succeeding at. Like that's the only way you're ever going to outwork your self-doubt is by keep trying and failing at things. And if you're going through hard times in life, I totally understand getting stuck in that rut and feeling like you'll never get out of it and not having the motivation to try something new. But if you can ever find that spark, use it. Use that one moment, move your body, and slowly start to build that confidence in yourself that you can break out of that and pull through.
That's a good one, man. And then the final question, how would you define living a limitless life?
How do you define a limitless life? I guess for myself, I would say reaching a point of contentment, but also understanding that just living in peace of mind might not be enough, that you also need progression. So use your contentment as your baseline, reach that way of finding peace of mind, but then from there, go with that peace of mind in progressing forward and becoming even better or doing bigger things.
Well, that's what I got for you today, folks. Jesse, where can people find you, my friend?
Right now, primary is just my Instagram handle is singular.advancement. And yeah, and then also if you do want to see the documentary, I do have my podcast channel started once I actually get this thing going. Right now, it is just my short documentary on there. You can find it. It's victim.number2.victor is the channel, and the documentary is called Burn Victor.
Nice. That's so good. All right, folks, if you loved today's episode, please do me a favor right now. Share it on your Instagram stories and tag me with my handle at Warrior Body Kyle, along with at singular.advancement. This is one of the ways that we grow. And until next time, I hope your day treats you as good as you look. Have a good one.